Ida for yelling at my girlfriend and giving her the silent treatment after she pulled a prank. Not enough info. I've 22 male been with Nicole 25 female for a couple years now, and she's always liked survival stuff and weaponry and all that. I absolutely don't. Really bad experiences with knives when I was younger, and Nicole knows about them. We both love Halloween and usually throw a party and dress up and goof around, cook up pumpkin seeds and watch movies. Anyway, the point is Nicole loves doing tricks with her knives like 5-finger fillet, flicking it open and closed, twirling it etc., and she'll do it when we're watching a show or movie together, forgetting that I've asked her please not to. Or she'll buy a new one and show it off, asking if I wanted to give it first bite and pout when I say no. 2 days ago she was playing with it again and I asked her why she keeps forgetting and she said, "Wow, okay, don't insult my intelligence again." And then that it was just a knife and therefore not a big deal and therefore not that important to remember. After that she put away the knife and we continued to have an okay night. But I was on edge and jumpy whenever she touched me. Yesterday she called me into the kitchen. Only she was playing 5-finger fillet. And I startled her, and she messed up. Badly. I lost my cool. Screamed my head off, tried shouting what I knew about first aid at her, while I raced to grab my phone. Complete panic, dialing 911. Only for her start laughing and show me that it was a prank involving red food dye and a carrot. She had a nice laugh about how I would have known it was a joke if I wasn't so squeamish about knives, that it's proof I need to get more comfortable, that anyone with passing knowledge knows that it doesn't look like that when something like that happens. She kept explaining how she did it, how she practiced, how she could show me, but I didn't even answer her. It was like my head was underwater and my heart was beating out of my chest. Just moved on autopilot, and grabbed my keys and drove a few blocks away before pulling over to breath. Nicole tried to call me and the first thing I said was it wasn't funny at all, and she asked, "Are you crying?" Then I hung up on her. She kept texting me, saying she was sorry, that she didn't think I'd react so badly to a joke, that it was just meant to be good fun in the Halloween spirit. I ignored her. I texted her after that I was home but ignored everything else. This morning she sent the picture of the props to the group chat with a few of our mutual friends, and they chimed in saying it doesn't even look real. I've muted the chat since and I'm wondering if I have a leg to stand on before I go back and apologize. Edit. It's overwhelming how much of a response this got, and I tried to read all of your comments. Some of them made me laugh, some warmed my heart. Others had very hard truths that I still needed to hear, no matter how raw it left me. There are a lot of repeating questions and assumptions. First, we don't live together. At this point, I don't think we ever will. Second, I stayed primarily because the good seemed to outweigh the bad. You remember the negatives more than the positive, so obviously I just had to remember her positive qualities instead of being swayed by my focus on the bad times. Plus, it was always almost perfect after we had a fight, and I just assumed the boom and bust cycle was normal. I didn't know Nicole liked knives at first. A mutual friend, Crystal, who was in the group chat, and I met Crystal during a community college course, introduced us as I was new to the area, and at first Nicole and I hit it off, as we had a lot of shared interests: music, art, outdoors activity, going antiquing, wine, food and cooking. Just a lot of things. We started dating and eventually went on a camping and hiking trip, where she used a knife to split some kindling and she was pointing it toward herself. I remember telling her to watch out and she had me to relax because she did it all the time. She asked me if I wanted to do it myself and I admitted I didn't like knives. Later in the trip we drank by the fire and talked, and that's when I told her about my trauma. She promised to protect me, and I remember that exactly because I had the mental image of her fending off a mugger, and I joked that she was my hero. My trauma has been brought up after that point, and neither of us were drunk at the time. My knife issues typically don't impact my daily life except to make me more apt to be very slow in the kitchen when chopping things. It doesn't seem like abuse, especially when we're good. When it's bad, it's really rough. I don't have really any other baseline as I was a late bloomer dating-wise. My dad always said that you should both give 110% in a relationship, but everyone argues. I thought working through the rough patches was normal. That's also why I was preparing to apologize, because it takes two in an argument, so I am responsible as well, and need to apologize for my part. In this case, ruining the night with my reaction. I did go through therapy to help cope with the initial incident surrounding my aversion to knives. I was a lot worse when it happened to the extent where I couldn't have anyone point the knife in the direction of another living being, or certain songs on the radio that were playing at the time, or certain smells. I've made progress, but clearly not enough to stay with her and deal with her fidgeting with the knives. I will admit to backsliding a bit in that I seem a lot more anxious when I stay the night and can't stay asleep, or having more nightmares, which is why I believed her when she said I was overreacting. Also concerning the fidgeting. It's not a constant thing. Sometimes she'd go weeks without pulling the knife out. Sometimes she'd complain that I only focus on the fact she had used the knife, versus how long she had abstained, which seems reasonable to point out. Comments. Comment 1. That is a completely unstable reaction. Also, her toxic masculinity is over the top, and you do not deserve to be treated that way. I'm so sorry she scared you like that, and that she thought it was okay, it just overreacted. You did not overreact. Your feelings and trauma associated with them are completely valid. And she sounds like a hateful, unkind person. Please do not go back to her unless someone else is there with you, and stay safe. Sending you hugs. You got this tomorrow. You are a strong person. Comment 2. My abusive ex had a knife thing too. He used to take them out, press the blade to himself, and threaten to hurt himself during our arguments. 2 years after our breakup, I found his favorite argument knife. I had stolen it and hidden it so he couldn't use it against me anymore. Finding the knife left me a sobbing wreck. Even almost a decade later, I can still picture it. It was a light green camo pocket knife. That relationship changed the chemistry of my brain for the worse. I wish Oop all the healing. I hope his ex pretzels her car around a tree. Update. A lot of the conversation is paraphrased with quotes that stuck in my mind. I also kept adding to this as things developed, and I'm running on zero sleep, so I'm sorry if it's not very clear. I did reach out to Nicole again yesterday to talk, and I went with the intention of standing my ground and explaining things so she could understand my side. She greeted me with thanks for gracing me with your presence and asked if I was here to act my age and talk like an adult. She slammed the door behind me and pointed to the couch so we could discuss things. Nicole opened with my reaction was unreasonable and completely out of line considering the situation. I said that things need to change because that prank wasn't okay at all, and she knows I have issues with knife violence, and I asked what was funny about the prank. She interrupted and said that ultimatums aren't part of any relationship, so I said I don't think this is working out for us. I don't think we're happy together. Nicole froze at first, and I started to explain that the knife thing and our respective stances being so different is not fair to either of us. But she repeatedly asked, so you're going to break up nearly 3 years just because of this? I tried to tell her it was more than just this. It was everything else. It was that she keeps forgetting and triggering me, that she loves playing with them but it upsets me. But she started talking over me and yelling that apparently I think she's an idiot, and that I'm the best actor in the world because she never knew I felt so horrible, and that maybe I should call the cops on her for abuse. She grabbed her cell phone and offered it to me again and again, saying go on, call, but when I said we just need to talk, she interrupted with no you won't, because you know I know. We both know, no cop is going to arrest me for a joke. Also, I'm not very tall, 5'A". And she's only 5'A", but she was standing right in front of me while I was seated, so I couldn't get up without moving her. After throwing her phone on the couch next to me, she stormed into the kitchen shouting that she should get rid of all her knives because I'm so terrified. She threw a few into the sink and then the whole block of knives into the trash, the whole time asking what about this one? Too sharp? Too scary? When I flinched at the noises, she said, oh, do you feel threatened? How do you think I feel when I have to defend myself against your feelings? Nicole told me to quit crying, that I can't just use tears to manipulate her, and mocked me when I said please stop. She said she has to walk on eggshells because she has to deal with a boyfriend that can't handle a single joke without running off into the night. It's not hard to not overreact, literally just think before you go crazy. It's that simple. And that it's ridiculous that a grown man can't handle a knife or a gun, and I refuse to let go of my victimhood, because anyone normal would have gotten over it by now. It's been nearly 9 years. She called me stubborn and childish for picking this hill to die on. That I'm not innocent. It's not fair that I'm allowed to ignore her for hours, but she can't have a little fun. And is my ego really that big? It's sickening that I don't trust her, or think she's smart or skilled enough to handle a knife properly, and it's sexist, infantilizing and insulting. At some point I said I think I need to go home, and it was like a switch. And she said please stop crying, I hate when you cry. Joked, I think. Because she laughed, I guess Hibaki dates are off the table, huh? And I should probably take the knives out of the trash now, shouldn't I? She apologized and said since it means so much to me she'll put in more effort. She admitted that I'm such a sensitive guy that if she stopped doing everything that made me uncomfortable she wouldn't be able to do anything. She pointed out that I cried watching my girl the other day as proof that I'm overly emotional, and it made sense that she thought I was just being my normal self. But she was sorry for not realizing sooner it was really upsetting me. She promised she would do her best not to bring the knives out when I'm around. Nicole hugged me and told me to let go. We can get through this. There's nothing we can't get over. And asked for a chance to start over. Fresh start tomorrow. No more jokes. It's stupid, but I just said yes. I wanted to go home, get out of her house and leave while she was still acting nice. And I didn't hold my ground. I feel like an idiot and a coward. I got home and puked and couldn't get to sleep again. Today Nicole came and dropped off lunch and coffee for me, gave me a kiss and said she loved me, and all the old ladies in the office were gushing about how cute we are together. I'm going to reach out to one of the guys I'm closer to, and the friend who set us up to find out when Nicole got so into knives. Because I remember about 7 to 8 months in it, was shortly after the camping trip, and it was Nicole's birthday that she asked for a specific knife as her present, so at least then, but I can't really remember there being anything major before then. I'm going to break up officially with her tomorrow with one of the guys if possible, so I can get my stuff from her place. Update 2. There's previous information in my profile concerning a post I made on Ada a few years ago. I came to Reddit about my girlfriend and her knife prank. It's been a long while since, and I was uncertain if I could update here or there or wherever. Roll this back over a decade ago for more background. When I was a preteen, we experienced a home invasion that resulted in my mother and dog dying and left me with a lifelong phobia of knives and anxiety surrounding blood and break-ins. Directly following the break-in, I was unable to handle a knife being pointed at another living creature. My brain caught on to stupid things and connected them to the events and made them into triggers. Mom's perfume. The sound of glass shattering or a door banging open. A song that was playing at the time. Even now I still hate the song, but at least it doesn't trigger a flashback anymore. Blood on beige carpet featured prominently in my nightmares. I worked extensively with a therapist to process what happened and what I'd seen. Recovery took years of therapy, weeks of inpatient care, medication to help with the nightmares, PTSD, depression and anxiety. We sold the house as soon as we could. I moved out of state as soon as I could. I kept up with therapy and continued to take my medication. My aversion to knives became something minor in how it impacted my life. I was careful in the kitchen and I certainly didn't search out knife throwing competitions. But it was under control in my normal daily life. It helped that everything seemed to be coming together. I made new friends, I was balancing work and school. I just met the girl who'd become my first long-term adult girlfriend. I know now it was just the honeymoon phase, but it felt like we were progressing well even once infatuation wore off. We stood together through highs and lows and the mediocre middle ground where there's nothing exciting, just the mundane. I thought that was the marker of a steady relationship, to be able to stick together even after the excitement of a new relationship has faded. We went on a few trips together, driving across state lines to meet her family, or flying back to see my dad. On one of our trips we went camping and my fear of knives got brought up. That led to the break-in getting brought up. She seemed to care at the time, even promising to protect me if something ever happened, and offering to help install a camera in my apartment. After the camping trip, I don't know if it was always there and I noticed it more after or what. But she started to be more obviously into knives. Practicing tricks in front of me, showing videos to me, starting a collection. She even asked for a knife for her birthday that year, showing me exactly which one she wanted. Before she was into camping, into guns, which ironically I have zero issue with, and how to forage, make shelter, purify water, basic survival stuff, and artillery and tanks. She did multiple courses about military history in college and busted out the textbook sometimes if she remembered something she thought I would find interesting. But suddenly it seemed like her focus was on carving and skinning animals, on knife wounds and tricks and collecting and displaying knives. She started doing the tricks more often, in front of me, even when sitting next to me on the couch, or at the dinner table. She would gesture with the knife without thinking and even point it at me again. One of my major triggers being knives pointed at people or animals. She started sending me videos of news clips of other break-ins, or news reports of robberies ending in murder, between a bunch of other funny videos or pictures, so checking Snapchat became a game of Russian roulette. If I didn't check the links sent through text, she'd keep sending them and ask what I thought. She'd forget she had the knife in hand when she came up to me, sometimes from behind. My nightmares came back. My anxiety got worse. No matter how often I reminded her to please stop playing with the knife in front of me, or at least not next to me, she would always forget after a little bit. Some part of me refuses to believe there's no way she risked bodily harm, just to unnerve me. It came to a head when she pulled a prank where she pretended to cut off a finger. We had a huge fight, our biggest one yet. I wish I'd acted differently and hadn't stormed out, but I did. There is a lot about my time with Nicole I would do differently in hindsight. I was so sure I'd just break up with her for good. I don't know why I didn't stay broken up with her. When I did it first, I did it alone because my friend Jack rolled his eyes and called me a PSI for wanting backup. So I did it in a coffee shop instead, hoping the public eye could be my backup. Nicole stared at me with this affronted expression, and it was like I couldn't find the words anymore. Her eyes were huge and wide and hateful. Like I've never seen anyone glare at me like that. She gripped onto the cup like she was going to throw it at me. I had it in my head to bolt the second she moved, because I could see it so clearly. But then she started crying loudly and kept asking why I would do this to her, and that she hoped I found happiness with someone better since she clearly wasn't enough for me, despite doing everything to be a good girlfriend. I felt like shit, and people were staring, so I wished her well and asked if she wanted me to call a friend. But she told me to leave her the fuck alone, so I did. I hate how I handled the breakup, but it felt in the moment like autopilot. In short order, I lost the support of our mutual friends who had become my only friends during my relationship with Nicole, which I understand as they knew her for much longer. Jack actually confronted me and called me a piece of shit for embarrassing her like that in public, calling me trash for leaving her sobbing alone, and not even offering her a ride home. He wouldn't listen to my explanations and said I could excuse myself, but everyone now knew what kind of guy I really am. People at work mentioned how sad it was that we broke up. I didn't feel like it was the place to explain my reasoning, and after the confrontation with Jack, I didn't feel like I had a right to. I felt like crap, like a shit person, and I felt numb. I tried to move on, to find a new normal. After about a month of us being broken up, she called me and begged for me to come over to help her. She was scared she'd hurt herself. I went to her immediately. I held her all night, helped her wash her hair after days of not being able to bring herself to. She admitted she'd done a horrible thing and that she couldn't stand how she'd treated me, that she wished she could go back and change so we could still be together. Didn't know how to address that, so I just stayed with her the whole night, and the next day at work she came by to drop off a homemade lunch and to thank me for being there for her. I stupidly let myself get sucked back in. I get that it's my fault. Coffee in the morning became dinner and drinks out became movie nights and going to shows and flea markets together, because we still had similar interests. One time she even noticed a booth with knives and directed us away. And while yes, it wasn't necessary as I could see a knife display and not be freaked out, it was a nice gesture because before she would have gone there and either bought one herself or asked me to buy it for her. One of multiple changes that made me think maybe she was truly making an effort. That, at the least, maybe we could be friends again. I started to get invited back into the group somewhat. 2 months later she kissed me. We were both drunk and it didn't go any further. I didn't talk to her about it because I thought she didn't remember, but then she approached me to ask if there was any salvaging us, if she'd proven that she was different now and things would be better. I thought maybe. I stayed because she really had been so sweet. It was like starting over, and we got back together. I was permitted back into the friend group in full, though Crystal had stopped talking to everyone and Jack still refused to talk to me, and while it was awkward at first, soon enough we were acting like we'd never stopped being friends for even a minute. It felt so good to go back to normal. It was like a weight off my chest and like I could breathe again. It was nice for a while. She was so careful about the knives thing and it really did feel so normal and steady. Sure, we had small fights, but we always made up shortly after, and she'd be overwhelmingly loving after the fact. It felt like it was before, so it felt normal. I can't pinpoint when it started to creep back, but maybe when she started watching documentaries on her phone with the sound up high while sitting next to me, or when she'd poke or grab me while I was cutting up dinner, then laugh at my startled response. Or she'd scoff if I teared up watching or reading something, then tell me later that it was out of fondness, not exasperation, and I really needed to stop reading so much into it. Or she'd yell at me for forgetting something that she never even told me about, and then the next day she'd get frustrated that I didn't insist properly that she was mistaken. Like it was all small things that on their own weren't even that big of a deal and I didn't feel like I could just speak up about it, or else I was nitpicking her. In hindsight, I was making excuses and clinging to when she was nice to me, trying to do anything to make sure we just stayed happy and without bumps. Part of it was that I knew now that I'd be alone, that no one would understand why I'd throw away a good relationship. That being with her was the best thing that could ever happen to me. We moved in together 4 months after our getting back together. She was hinting around that it was the only way to prove to her that I'd forgiven her, and that way we could move on and be happy. She insisted I move into her place because it was easier to move an apartment into a house than the other way around. It constantly felt like she was dangling that night, where she was suicidal over me. Like one wrong move from me, and maybe the next time she wouldn't call for help. When we had fights, she paced through the house flicking a knife, looping from the bedroom to the living room to the office, or said every single argument was really due to the fact I was holding a grudge over the prank, and that we wouldn't be arguing if I just grew up and stopped taking out my trauma on her. She'd tell me not to piss her off because it would be too easy for her to make a mistake and no one would think twice about what happened. A few times she'd gone on a rampage and overturned tables and threw glasses into the sink and dishwasher and said, "We were done for good," only for the next day to blow up my phone begging me to talk this out, or have her friends encourage me to swallow my pride and go back to her, because she's miserable without me and she's trying so hard. Or she'd just wake me with a kiss after making me sleep on the couch, as if the night before never happened. If I asked about the night before, the fight would start all over, yet this time it'd be my fault because she was trying to move on, but I was holding a grudge. The following nearly 10 months were the most terrifying, anxiety-riddled period of my life, and I only had myself to blame. Coming home from work, I puked my guts out more than a few times on the way, just because I didn't want to go back to her. I felt trapped. She threw away the blanket my mother had knitted me for my crib because it was dirty. It wasn't dirty, it was a knit blanket that had been repaired repeatedly and hand-washed frequently, so she'd accidentally put it through the wash and destroyed it. Then bought a completely different throw blanket as a replacement, and got mad when I didn't consider the matter resolved. She pulled another prank, this time with a fake positive pregnancy test, and berated me for not being overjoyed, because I immediately started panicking about the cost, bringing up a child in our dysfunction, and handling the stress, rather than being excited. I feel like she wanted me to be happy so that she could crush my joy, and so was angry that I didn't play to her expectation. That night she threatened me with the knife, pointing it at me and saying she should just snip me right then since I didn't want to have kids with her, and then held me as I sobbed because I went into a panic. I didn't want her touching me, but I didn't know what else to do but let her, and to apologize to her. Another time she put the knife to her own throat during a fight, and said I clearly want her to kill herself, and didn't stop until I screamed at her begging her to stop. Sometimes when driving she'd start speeding and swerving, or closing her eyes while on the highway, and saying my fear meant I didn't trust her. Nicole just kept getting worse by the day. I remember waking up one morning with a moment of clarity. I knew she'd eventually kill me. I was sleeping next to my murderer. It still wasn't enough to push me away. Escaping her orbit seemed like too much, more than I could handle. Everything I had in me was focused on just surviving day to day. I never knew if she'd break up with me on a whim, or pick a fight, or be constantly pushing me closer to a panic attack all night, or if she'd flip and be so sweet and caring. I felt like every day was Russian roulette hour to hour. Every word I said or action I did or didn't do a chance to start a raging fight. She'd tossed out my antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication one night, and then during the resulting argument she made a big show of forgiving me for raising my voice. I shouldn't have done that. I have no excuse, and then helping me call in an emergency refill. For weeks after, because I said I wanted to break up during the argument, she would ask if I was going to try to run away every time that something went wrong. Takeout order wrong? I spilled a cup of water? Streaming service not working immediately? Oh, don't get your panties in a twist and run off, and do I have to worry about you leaving me over this mistake too? Eventually that tapered off, but maybe once a month during a fight she would tearfully go to our friends and ask them to mediate, then during the meeting say that I kept threatening to leave her again, over nothing, and how scared she was of losing me, when she didn't know what set me off. More than a few times she showed me texts from them where her friends were saying how she deserved better and didn't need to put up with me, but she'd tell me I don't listen to them because I love you anyway. She'd slap me and push me during arguments. I could never do anything right, because even doing what she wanted without argument or not looking her in the eye could be enough to send her off the rails. Sometimes as a joke, just in general, one of our friends would pull out a little pack of tissues and hand it over to me in case I'd run out, or make a production of hiding the butter knife at dinner under the napkin. It was humiliating, but if I spoke up, suddenly I was oversensitive. An embarrassment. No fun, and I had to learn how to deal with adult friendships and jokes, and they'd ask her how she could stand it. As a result, I didn't spend much time with them either. Usually Nicole would just go out with them and I'd stay home, which was the most relaxing I've ever felt during that time. Except for when she started randomly coming home without any notice or timeline, like saying she'd be home at 6, but then not coming back till midnight or early morning. Or saying she'd be gone until 10 and coming early back at 2 or 3, or randomly calling the house phone to make sure I was home, and getting angry if she even thought I sounded breathless, accusing me of having left. She started hinting around that marriage would be the logical next step and I was insulting her by not having proposed yet. Then she bought an engagement ring with my credit card and started showing off to all her friends how perfect my choice was. I didn't want to marry her. I felt bad for not wanting to marry her. I wanted us to be happy, and maybe giving her the wedding she wanted would help. I didn't want to marry her. In all those months I never went to sleep feeling safe. I lied awake in bed hyper-aware of how close she was, and trying to go over in my head if I had behaved well enough to keep her happy, and what I could do to prevent another explosion. In hindsight, it's sickening how long I let this go on. In the moment, it was just about all I could think to do. I often woke up with nightmares, which would in turn piss her off and set her off in a mood for the next day. But if I suggested sleeping separately, she would rage about how I was calling her a shitty girlfriend, fiancé, etc. I started to keep a notebook at work and just writing shit down. Things she'd done or said, incidents and what I'd done to set her off. It helped me feel more sane, and also more like a fucking moron, because I could read back on times she actually hurt me and I still hadn't left. Every time I thought about leaving, I felt sick inside. I'd lose every social contact I had. I would have to find a new place to live. I'd have to bar her from my workplace, but they can't do anything without a restraining order, and that itself felt like a hurdle too. I dropped all my old friends in favor of her, and felt like they'd refuse to even talk to me again. I was the idiot that let her back into my life and rekindled the relationship, despite overwhelming feedback. I was stupid enough to deserve every bit of what was happening, and too dumb to deserve to escape after wasting my previous chances. I hated myself and had frequent fantasies of just ending it all. The worst part wasn't the anxiety and terror, though. It was when she was sweet and caring. For example, she always went all out for my birthday or anniversaries or Christmas, with thoughtful gifts, except for the year where she kicked me out for the evening after throwing some decorations at the wall, because they stopped working, for which she blamed me because I put them up. She was sweet and gentle one day, or even for a week or two, only to slowly start ramping up the tension until she exploded yet again. She had an uncanny ability to blame me in ways that made me feel responsible for her emotions and for forcing her to react violently. When we drove out to visit my dad for Easter, things started to change. Dad was concerned about how quiet I'd become, and that I hadn't come for Thanksgiving or Christmas or even called on Nye like I used to. That I looked tired, unhappy and thin. Nicole was on her best behavior the whole time and even left her knives in the car, even tried to get everyone to focus on the engagement ring, but Dad still saw something was wrong. For 3 weeks after, he kept trying to contact me, but she wouldn't let me talk without her in the room, and she checked my phone anytime she left me alone and checked the records online to see if I had deleted any calls. Eventually I managed to get a burner phone and hid it at work, which allowed me to talk to my dad freely. He flew over with my uncle, and they helped me gather my stuff from her house. When Nicole started sobbing and begging me to stay, my uncle kept her from the kitchen knives and had his phone ready to call 911 if she tried to hurt herself or us. When Nicole started to insist I was taking her stuff too, even though I was only taking things either I brought with me or I bought for me, I just let it go. She got to keep a few sentimental items of mine, and the loss hurts still, but the most important ones I was able to take, like I was able to get all my documentation and cards out of her house. I didn't even bother with the ring. It was just money and she was already acting up. Uncle drove my car home while Dad had me fly with him. I'm ashamed to admit that the months directly following the breakup were almost worse than the time I spent with her, because I was out of survival mode and I couldn't force myself to function the way I used to. I felt like a parasite on my father, unable to get my shit together, falling apart over nothing, being so volatile it frightened me. I'm in therapy again. Sometimes I feel better, like I can see a way forward, but then I feel like I'm back in the thick of it and I'll never go back to normal, and I'm permanently broken. Worse, every time I cry or get triggered or have a flashback, I can still hear her voice in my head calling me over emotional and too sensitive, that I'd be fine by now if I just got over myself, that what I went through wasn't that bad. She sent mail to my dad's house for a while, threatening letters and pleas for me to see reason and stop overreacting, pictures of us that were sentimental, guilt trips. At first I couldn't get a restraining order right away against her, because I moved, something about the jurisdictions and courts, but when she sent those letters it helped at least make sure she couldn't continue to contact me. I found my old laptop a while ago and it had the password pre-populated. It wouldn't leave my mind, especially when I read what people were saying. Right now I'm just rambling to get my head straight, to be honest, but my DMs were full of people saying how the sex must be amazing, how stupid guys get when they want to stick their dick in something, that I don't have balls or a backbone clearly and I just need to man up. Basically everything I told myself to remind me of what I did to deserve being stuck with her. I don't know if I can muster the courage to address any responses to them, but I really just want to tie up this loose end in my life so maybe I can stop rehashing it mentally and finally move on. I might also give my therapist the notebook I kept of Nicole's abuse, but I haven't wanted to even look for it. There's still a box of shit that I haven't opened up because it's all fucked with my head so much. What I wish I knew at the start of all this shit was that any amount of genuine discomfort isn't an acceptable price in a relationship, and you're allowed to stop giving them more chances even if they're trying and seem sorry. You're not obligated to help people change, even if you love them. even if they do slightly better. Now, for the next story. Tifu by agreeing to let my coworker move in with me, and now things have taken an unexpected turn. I won't bore you with details of how, but I'm a widow, aged 38. After losing my husband 10 years ago, I decided to transfer to a different state in my career. I sold our home for a tidy profit, bought a good-sized 4-bedroom house and started new. I've been in this area for 7 years and never really dated. Went on some coffee dates, but nothing that made me want to stop wearing my ring. I know, kind of sad, still wearing it even after my husband is long gone, but I never felt the need to remove it. After losing my husband, and having uterine cancer soon after made me infertile, I just decided to coast. Enter my coworker Jason, fake name, who transferred in a year ago. He's in the middle of a nasty divorce. His parents live close and they want to sell and move to a warmer climate, but not until the end of the year. Rent and housing had obviously skyrocketed, so I offer him a bedroom in my home. He mentions he can't because he has 2 little girls, 6 and 7, and his wife wants everything but them, and she's willing to sign over rights as long as she gets their house. After a discussion, I agree to let him and his daughters move in for 30 days as a trial. Well, it's been 9 months and it's been amazing. Unfortunately, I've fallen in love with him and the girls. My house finally has sounds of happiness instead of echoes of loneliness. I haven't felt like this since my wedding day when I got married at 18, and I am so scared. I tried squishing down my feelings, but I can't. I threw myself back into the dating game and tried going out as much as possible, every time leading to disappointment. Jason came to me last month and advised his parents are moving at the end of this year, and he would finally be out of my hair. His parents would be letting him move into their house, and he and the girls would have their own place. I congratulated him and offered to help pack the house and decorate the girls' new rooms. Well, he was able to move in last weekend. Hence, where I flew. Big time. The last day he and the girls were here, I made a huge goodbye dinner. As the girls climbed into his car to go to their home, I hugged him probably too long, and went to kiss him on the cheek. He went to do the same, and well, we missed. I kissed him. And he kissed me. And neither of us pulled away until one of his girls made an EWWWW screech from the car. I mumbled to drop my key off under the mat when he was ready to, and closed the door on him. He knocked and asked to talk later, but I didn't open it or respond. I had taken this week off anyway, for Christmas, and am avoiding his texts and calls. My voicemail is full from him. I go back to work Tuesday and will see him, and I'm dreading it. Comments. Comment 1. This warms my heart. Posts where the other party also ends up posting on Reddit feel so overdone, but just because it feels so easy to see through and is always way too convenient. This I believe, or at least I choose to. Hell, if it's a ruse, who cares? It's well done. They have different styles of writing phrase and getting things across from each other, which is usually the first flag. Also, especially the first post, I do see that as reasonably something you'd come to post to Reddit about. The fact the guy has a continuing post and comment history that isn't just all about this makes it seem more real too. Comment 2. Good to read a happy story once in a while. But for the love of all that's holy, don't leave those quoted comments at 6 layers deep. On my phone, the last one was literally 1 character wide. Update 1. Date. This will be difficult to explain, but I hope I can make it easy to understand. My husband and I were basically born to be together. We had known each other from nursery school. I fell in love with him before I even knew what love was, and stayed in love. We got married at 18 and 19. We were planning a future. We had bought a house. We had career goals. We had retirement goals. When I lost him, I felt like I lost a lifeline. My time with him wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I had what everyone wants and deserves, and it was taken away from me. Just understand how freaking unfair that is, okay? After some heavy drinking, I came to the conclusion that when it comes to Jason, with him living here, it was the life I should have had by now. I should have had my husband here with me. I should have had the 2 kids we planned on having, in a house with noise and toys and laughter and cries and spats between siblings. This should have been my life. But the person there was the wrong person. It wasn't my 6'2" green-eyed monster of a man. And as much as I loved them, the girls weren't ours. I miss my husband, and I miss even more the life we were robbed of. I think it was Betty White said, after her husband passed away, she wouldn't date or marry again because she had the best, and nothing would compare to it. That's me. That's the truth. Absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, would compare to my husband. And right now I don't want anything to compare it to. That's what I told Jason. After reading the multiple texts of him just asking me to talk, saying there was something we had and he didn't want to lose, then him getting angry because I wasn't responding, then apologizing for being rightfully angry, then just asking if we could go back to being friends and forgetting everything that happened. When I got that text, I put my adult pants on and called him. I told him everything above. I told him everything I didn't mention on here because it would be too revealing. I told him that he was freshly divorced or will be, and I wasn't the rebound type of person. He and his wife haven't even been separated for a year at this point. And with my insecurities and comparisons to my marriage, it wouldn't be fair to pursue anything right now, especially with him. He's fresh off the block here, still hurt at his marriage failing. Because even though I think I fell in love with him, I need time to confirm if it's with him specifically, or just with the life I was supposed to have. Thankfully he understood, and thought I was possibly correct in my assumption that he was jumping into something we weren't ready for. He asked if we could still be friends, and I jumped at that option. I missed him, missed the girls, I missed having meaning instead of just coasting. He asked if I could come over for Christmas. I bought the girls some presents from me, and Santa, so I said of course, and I'll come over later tonight once the girls pass out. He seemed happy with this. I asked him not to tell the girls I was coming over, and we could have that damn adulting talk that a phone conversation won't cut it for. He promised to slip the girls a Benadryl NyQuil chaser to make sure they stay asleep. I'm pretty sure he was joking. So, that's my update. We're friends is. I see him tonight, and I'm more nervous than a prom date. But look at me, Reddit. I communicated. I got my big girl trousers on. They're scratchy and uncomfortable, and are probably going to give me a rash by the end of it. Update 2. In November 2021, my family and I moved towns into a neighborhood near my parents. I wanted to be close to them. They're in their 70s, time's taking their toll on them. My wife wasn't too keen on it, but our 2 kids were happy to see their grandparents more. I commuted to my job until I was able to get an in-town transfer to my current location. Come to find out, my wife reignited an old flame of hers, why she didn't want to move, and started cheating on me. My 3rd month into my new job, she tells me she wants a divorce, wants the house, and wants to sign over the kids. Her boyfriend has his own kids, and they want to move into the house and be one big happy family. I move into my parents' place. They got 1 spare bedroom cause the other's basically storage. My kids would be staying with their mom till I can find at least a 2-bedroom. My parents lay it out to me they want to move by the end of the year, and either sell or give me the house. I just have to do something by then. Rent's nuts out here. Then my wife throws on me her new man and his kids are moving in now, and not getting along with mine. So she agrees to make it quick and sign over rights to mine as long as she keeps the house. I had become friends with Hope at work. The day came I told her about needing to move and find a spot for me and my kids. She offered her home. I asked if her husband would mind, and she told me she didn't have one anymore. See, she still wore a wedding ring, and I never bothered to ask about it. Just always assumed she was married. Appears he passed away a decade ago and she just still wore the ring. We move in and it's a dream. I see this woman in a light I never thought of before. My kids loved her. She never put their mom down. She made them breakfast, lunch, dinner on her off days, and she would take them out to do girl things that I had no idea. She even took them school clothes shopping when I ran short on time to be able to do it. Hope just seemed happy as hell to be around us, and have us there. She was this warm, beautiful, caring woman I didn't notice cause I was too tied up in my own mess to see it, and her ring threw me off. The day I got my parents' house, I made a big mistake. I kissed her. She freaked out, asked me to drop my key off later, and ran inside. I texted her and called her, but she didn't get back to me for a week. She said that with me being freshly divorced that she didn't want to be a rebound, and she didn't want me to be one either. I said she was right, just to placate her. But she isn't. I asked her over for Christmas, and she said yes cause she has gifts for my kids. She came over and spent the night. She slept on the sofa and hung out with us until after dinner. My kids were through the moon with her there, and now they keep asking when they're going to see her again. We've been great at work, but I keep wanting more. I don't know if I should just date or whatever. She dated while we lived there, but nothing ever happened after the 1st or 2nd date. It's getting harder to see her as just a friend anymore. TL doctor, I think I'm falling in love with her, but have no idea how to get her to understand it's not just a rebound, it's real. Update 3. This is just an update for me. I'm finding it therapeutic to type this out. At least then it's not just playing in my head. I spent the night at Jason's on Christmas Eve. We talked for hours, until 2 a.m. It felt like home again. We both ended up falling asleep on the couch, and the girls woke us up. We did breakfast, we did lunch, we did presents, we did dinner. When I finally left, I thought I had some closure. I noticed Jason was on his phone more often this week. Finally, I got it out of him. He downloaded some dating app and had a hit. Not shocking it was so soon. Jason is fucking gorgeous. Okay? He doesn't look like he's in his 40s. He is so strikingly good looking. I used to joke with him that he looks like a fucking GQ model freshly stepped off the page. And he's funny. And he's smart. And he's smart. And he doesn't deserve to pine after someone who doesn't know what in the hell she wants. Because she never thought about it before. He asked me to babysit the girls so we could go out on a New Year's date. I had to say yes. Or whatever we talked about Christmas Eve wouldn't have mattered. So here I am. Alone on New Year's. Drinking his fancy expensive scotch we drank on Christmas that he got as a wedding gift. Because I have to charge something for this babysitting gig. And feeling some type of way because he's out there with someone else ringing in the new year. And he deserves to be happy. And I do too. I just put the girls to bed. I knew they wouldn't have lasted till midnight. Ada for asking a woman who I thought had feelings to watch my kids when I went on a date. Long story short, I'm divorced. It was finalized a couple of months back. During the mess of my divorce, me and my 2 kids moved in with a coworker named Hope for about 9 months. Give or take. She was great to us and my kids loved her, and to be honest I felt the same. I thought what she felt for me was more than friends, so I kissed her before I moved out to my current place. It ended up being a mistake. She ghosted me for a week before she finally called me. I thought we got over it over Christmas. Well, I didn't want to hold back for a woman who didn't feel the same, so I did the dating app thing and got a date for New Year's. I asked Hope if she could watch my kids while I went out. And she agreed. I went out, had a great time, and came back at 3 a.m. to Hope passed out on my sofa. I threw a blanket on her and went to bed myself, expecting to make breakfast for her and mine, but she left before I woke up. The morning after I asked her if she could watch my kids again while I set up a second date. She immediately declined, saying she was having her sister and brother-in-law over this week. Her sister has 3 kids of her own, and yeah, Hope has a big house, but with everyone there she wouldn't have time to watch mine. I understood and said I'd find other accommodations. Well, this morning I see Hope tagged in a sappy post by who I assume is her sister, and I checked that page. Sure enough, it is her sister, and her sister's family is spending the next 3 weeks out of the country and not with Hope. Now I know she only has one sister, so I asked her what was up. She kind of stuttered a bit, and said yes, she can watch my kids and to go ahead and set up the second date. When I asked her why she lied to me, she brushed me off and told me to stop being an and I got what I needed. Update 4. Well, I've been asked for an update. I'm simply here to please the masses. The masses who messaged me, the masses who posted on my posts, the masses who were extremely correct, and I had absolutely no idea how utterly brilliant and wonderful about 90% of you are. I posted here because I needed to vent and throw my foo at people so they could see that even I could do something as silly as fall for someone I shouldn't have. Not when I still wore a wedding ring from someone who left me very tragically, I will add. But not elaborate on a long time ago. The ring told me my heart and soul still belonged to someone else, even though I didn't have theirs anymore. I posted here because I needed to vent out everything. Needed to give myself closure. Needed to figure out why this man, whom you now all know as Dan, rocked my universe by just becoming a part of it. I was told to go for it. And I excused it all with no. I'm still a mourning widow who can't fathom taking her ring off. I theoretically clutched my pearls at such a thought. But you guys want to know the good part though, don't you? And you guys deserve to know it too. Because if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be a good part. On Christmas morning he was making breakfast. I came to the kitchen and had to do a double take. Granted, I was uncaffeinated, so in my sleepy state I had expected to see my husband. But when he turned and smiled at me with a grin big enough to reach his eyes, I didn't feel sadness or disappointment that those eyes weren't green. That he didn't give me a cute smirk like my husband used to, but a whole smile was so much. Damn, teeth. For real, Dan, you have so much teeth, and I for one am so happy your girls have your smile. And that you have great dental. It was then I realized I was fucking wrong. I wasn't prepared to be wrong, to lose my grip on my pearls, so to speak. I just wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready to see someone else in my dreams. I sure wasn't ready for that someone else to be someone I considered my best friend for a long time. So when Dan had asked me to watch the girls so he could get a second date, to be honest, it hurt like hell. Even though I told him to move on, I was pissed he did because I didn't. I fumbled up an excuse about my sister coming over, but obviously didn't think it clear enough that my sister and her family usually head overseas during this time. Well, he found out she wasn't gracing me with her presence and asked me why I lied. I just kinda said, "Oh yeah, I'll watch the girls, no problem." But he said he already had a sitter, and said he wanted to know why I lied. I said I didn't, I forgot, but lo and behold, when you live with someone they pick up on your tells. Dan said, "No, you're lying. I don't care if you can't, or even if you're not up for it. That's fine, just be honest with me." I called him an asshole, and said I'd be there, just tell me a time. He said to come over for breakfast and we can talk out whatever is wrong with us like adults, hope, that thing we're trying to be. Well, apparently that night he made a post and a few of you guys found some similarities that were a bit too convenient to be coincidental. So late that same night, I get a call from him, which I ignored twice. Third time's a charm, and I proceed to advise him where to stick a few choice amenities for waking me up until he blurts out, "You named me after your cat." Yes. I named my cat Jason. He's a seal point and he has a cute mask and he's the size of a small dog and looks at me like he wants to kill me in my sleep. I absolutely love him. So, we talked for about a half hour or so, until he said he had to see me. But he wasn't going to leave his girls alone that late, and asked me to take a personal day tomorrow, and he'd do the same. I said no, but I could come over. He said only if I could stay the night. So I grabbed some extra clothes, put on my comfy bright pink bear claw slippers, yes, they're as magnificent as they sound, filled the feeder for my chubby boy Jason, and headed over. We talked until about 3 a.m., and he said he was going to take a personal day, and said I should do the same. Well, at that point you couldn't twist my arm fast enough, so I agreed to it and went to grab some blankets, but he stopped me. He asked me if I could try sleeping in the same bed as him. The typical fare of he'd be over the covers, I'd be under them, he promised to wear clean underwear, yada yada. Color me surprised at agreeing with him, and me crying for the first 20 minutes and being held by someone who didn't understand why, but understood that I just needed to freaking cry. And then being held by someone because I needed it. And then being held by someone because I wanted it. And then being held by someone because they just wanted to. And yeah, I fell in love again. Okay? I freaking fell in love. Again. Except this time I know what it is. And it was happening long, long ago and I was too scared to understand it. But I should have noticed something when he transferred in and I saw him the first time. He was handsome. Not even he can deny that. But when he smiled with all those damn teeth, he just became so much warmer. And real? I guess. I just felt like I had to be near him. Even when he made horrible dad jokes, and gave himself heartburn with his spicy food addiction, but refused to take responsibility for it. I lived for those moments. And when they were gone, I was absolutely miserable. I never knew how falling in love felt. My husband and I, we were born in love with each other, so I never experienced this before, so I was scared. And don't get me wrong, I'm still scared. I've been on theme park rides less anxiety-inducing than this. We agreed to take this one day at a time. We know we're going to have setbacks. And we know we're going to have to hide it from the girls for now. I'm also transferring departments to keep things a bit more under wraps. But we're trying it. We are trying it. We're making it happen. I'm in love with him. I have been, I just had no clue what it was. It felt like I was floating, and was trying not to sink. And when I met the girls, had no choice but to drown and just succumb to the peace. Now, for the next story. My cousin asked my daughter to perform at her wedding reception, but became upset after seeing the positive response to her performance. My cousin Dana, not real name, had her wedding 2 weeks ago, and she asked if my daughter could perform at her reception. My daughter Jane, also fake name, has practiced Silk's lyra for the past few years at a nearby circus studio, and she's also performed with through the studio at small gigs. She hopes to continue into adulthood and become a professional teacher, but this recent incident has shaken her confidence. She has a private Instagram to document her progress performances, and I only post certain performances on my Facebook. Her first gig with the studio, and her first recital, to name a few, we're proud of. Some of our relatives saw her performances through my socials, and they watched her perform at her studio's Christmas recital, when we hosted Christmas at our home a few years back, something that surprised her when they visited early to see her. I love how they coordinated that, and Jane said it was her loudest cheering section to date. Dana was one of the relatives who came up early to see her Christmas recital, and she's always been super supportive. She asked me if Jane would be willing to perform at the reception, and I asked on her behalf. Jane was honored and excited when I did, and we already had a portable rig for her too, though we ended up renting a taller one from her studio. Dana got the idea from a YouTube video featuring an aerialist who performed at a wedding reception, and she showed us while requesting white silks and a white outfit. We scoped out the venue and purchased white silks along with a white costume that Dana approved of, and Jane was really excited throughout. Jane even worked on choreography to a song that Dana requested, and she put a lot of time into it, even asking one of her coaches to help her with it. Dana insisted on paying her for the gig despite Jane not expecting to be paid, and she paid her a few hundred. However, Dana's had a change of heart. Jane received a standing ovation after her performance that surprised her, but we didn't know anything was wrong until Dana went on Facebook a few days later. Dana said she didn't approve of the outfit Jane wore, and that she specifically told her to not wear white. She also said my husband and I pressured her to have Jane perform, and that the performance gave off an unclassy vibe, lies that my husband and I couldn't believe. We sent Dana numerous costume links and we purchased the one she liked. There was also nothing wrong with Jane's performance. Dana was one of the people cheering afterward. Jane received nothing but compliments afterward, but I'm disgusted that she had to see that post after all the work she put into it. The post also had comments disabled for what it's worth. I called Dana to confront her about the lies, but she didn't pick up numerous calls. I then called her parents who, like us, had received messages about her post, and they said that Dana was wrong. They apologized on her behalf and said they were also disgusted. Dana's mom also said that Dana vented to her before making her post a few days after the reception. Dana told her she regretted asking Jane to perform given the attention, compliments, and cheers she received for it. Her mom also said that she felt upstaged with Jane wearing white and having to hear how good she was. Dana's parents tried to call her after she made her post, but she didn't answer after their previous conversation ended with her parents telling her she shouldn't be bitter because she specifically asked Jane to perform. Dana's parents reported the post along with us others, and we've told the truth to those who reached out along with the post to explain our side. Stand up for Jane. We have text proof of sending costume links that Dana chose from. Dana's parents also requested to talk to Jane on the phone to apologize for Dana's behavior, and my husband and I told Jane that Dana was wrong and that we'll be distancing ourselves from Dana permanently. Dana's parents were surprised at her behavior, and we were too, having seen her grow up. Granted, we only see extended family for Thanksgiving and Christmas because we live far, but other relatives were surprised too, as it seemed to come from left field. Maybe there's a side of Dana we'll never know from our limited holiday milestone interactions, but our focus is Jane. We've tried to cheer Jane up by offering to take her to dinner among other activities, but she's been hurting, which is why I'm here. Jane hasn't practiced at home or the studio since the reception, and I don't want to invade her space at her studio by telling anyone there in case she doesn't want anyone to know. She asked me to return the white silks and costume after being so excited to receive them. She also said she's going to take an extended break from Ariel to reconsider if she wants to continue. Aside from Ariel, she's taken a break from seeing non-Ariel friends too, choosing to pretty much keep to herself. We would appreciate any advice from fellow Arielists on how to lift her spirits. We reminded her of how we're proud of her along with the many compliments she received. But she's asked for space and to not talk about it. We're going to respect that and let time do its thing, but we'll consider any advice from other Arielists who can relate to the time and work she put in. Sorry for this being so long, but we appreciate anyone who read and takes the time to reply. Comments from the first post. This is a rare story on this site, where everyone except the villain does everything right. If this happened to an adult or even an older teenager, she would probably still be hurt, but be able to see that Dana is the one with the issue. But at 16, she's still forming her idea of herself. It sounds like she's taking this all on as a reflection of herself. I'm not someone who can be in the spotlight. My desire to perform hurts my family. I would really consider therapy. You could say all the right things to her, and I bet you have, but at 16 it's hard to hear your mom. Alternatively, and I'm sorry to say this, but is it possible that Dana's new husband gave Jane any inappropriate attention? That might explain why Dana is so upset when she presumably should have known exactly what to expect, although certainly wouldn't excuse it. If there were any opportunities for Jane and the new husband to be alone, I would really look into that also, because it would also explain why Jane hasn't practiced since the reception, even though the drama started a few days later. It is an extreme place to go, but I would just ask yourself if there was an opportunity for him to be inappropriate, because she is withdrawing from her entire social life. When I was a teenager, driving up to the next city over helped me sometimes. Want to take a drive is still a question I ask myself when I feel stuck and hopeless. Go to the big aquarium and get cannolis at the outlet mall or something equally random. Maybe she'll open up or get out of her head, or maybe you all will just have a nice day. Lots of love to you and your family. Jealousy is horrible. And Dana has just made herself look bad to anyone that came to the wedding. Also, just for reference, I have performed at multiple weddings and have always had a white costume. It suits the theme and is no way comparable to a wedding dress. I always see aerialists in white at weddings take comfort in the internet op, and hopefully they can use it as a defense with Dana. If she wants to be that way, just post the receipts of how she asked her what to wear at CEC, if she's willing to say that for a 16-year-old. It'll pass because I promise Dana will have some new crazy thing to do very soon. These types always do. The bride is petty, immature, and ridiculous. First off, you must see that, help her see it too, if she doesn't already. When people show you who they are, listen. This is a painful but valuable lesson that your daughter is learning very early in her performance teaching career. Just like any obstacle or difficulty in life standing between us and the things we desire, she has the choice to either let it beat her down or let it lift her up and make more determined than ever. If she truly wants this, and does eventually go on to be an aerial coach and/or performer, she will face even more challenges. This is only serving to prepare her to face those. Making art is vulnerable. Sometimes people won't like it. But that tells you more about them than about you most of the time. Dana wanted her wedding to be all about her, which is fair to an extent, but obviously not to this extent, and I think she was happy to have a beautiful performance done for her, but forgot that people will congratulate the performer rather than the person who hired the performer. Given how extreme the response was, I would be a bit worried what someone else mentioned about the outside chance that Dana's husband said did something inappropriate. But my guess and hope is it's just a general attention thing. Regardless, it sounds like you and Dana's parents are handling things as best you can. Defending your daughter but respecting her privacy and boundaries sounds exactly like the right thing to do. Well done, you. I would just continue to be there for your daughter in a low-pressure way and make sure she knows she has safe people to talk to whenever she's ready. Maybe see if there are any non-aerial activities any of her friends are down to do with her. Maybe something like rock climbing, which can feel less performance-oriented and attention-grabbing but can still feel fun for an aerialist, because there's a fair amount of strength crossover. Hopefully she'll be comfortable with aerial again in future, but I think just trying to help her not socially withdraw too much would be good for her well-being for now. So sorry she's going through this. She sounds like a great kid and a very talented aerialist. Update. Before I get into what's happened since my last post, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment. 2 pieces of advice really stood out, and I'll get to them shortly. Since my original post, Dana's Facebook post is gone. I don't know if she deleted it or enough people reported it for Facebook to remove it, but we're glad it's gone. She never apologized to us or Jane or even bothered to call. So our position on being permanently done with Dana stands. My husband and I made a post on my Facebook addressing the lies she spewed about our daughter, and we shared photo proof of Dana's texts where she approved of Jane's white costume from links we sent. Not to mention the song choice she sent us too. Better yet, Dana's mother reposted it on her account, which really surprised me. Dana's mother wrote that they loved Jane's act and that they disapproved of Dana's actions. My husband and I also made sure that Jane was okay with us addressing it on Facebook, and she said it was fine. Normally I wouldn't use Facebook to address drama if aimed at me. But since this involves a grown adult attacking a minor, we felt the need to address it publicly because she disparaged her publicly, and Jane will remember whether we stood up for her or not years from now. I had a chance to speak with Dana's mother since my original post on the phone, and she spoke to Dana again since our last call. Dana reiterated how she regretted asking Jane to perform, but she harped on the standing ovation that bothered her the most. Dana told her that she expected Jane to get some polite applause, but that the overwhelming response really set her over the edge because she expected the loudest cheers to be when she and her husband entered the reception, but that went to Jane instead. Dana and her husband also received a great reception when they entered the reception, but Jane's performance did too, and Dana didn't expect it. Heck, even Jane was surprised by it too. She never received a standing ovation from a solo act before. But Dana's mother believes that if Dana had asked someone to sing who received a similar reception, Dana's jealousy would have been all the same. Someone suggested seeing if Jane would be interested in speaking to a therapist given how hurtful Dana's comments could be for a teen, and Jane said she's open to it so long as it isn't a counselor at school, because, as of now, she doesn't want anyone at school or her studio to know about the incident, and she vaguely told the coach who helped her choreograph that it went fine. We will respect her privacy request as it's her right to control the narrative. But in the same vein, I suggested therapy for Dana to Dana's mother since her reaction might be a bigger insecurity, and she said she'd ask. The other thing someone suggested was the possibility of Dana's husband, or anyone making an inappropriate comment to Jane during the reception that made her shut down and not want to see friends or practice days before Dana's post. My husband decided to ask her, and Jane said no when he did. If something happened, perhaps she'd be more comfortable telling a therapist with time. But on the bright side, she said she might want to try a different aerial studio because she doesn't want to answer questions about how it went or share a video at her home studio. So we will help her find somewhere new as she asked. We hope she doesn't permanently leave her current studio because she has friends and coaches who are supportive and she performs with that studio's troupe at festivals gigs. But I personally understand the need to sometimes go somewhere where nobody knows you for a break. And we hope that will help her. She hasn't said definitely yet. But if we does, we'll take her. She still wants an extended break from aerial in the meantime. But even if when she goes back, she said she may never want to perform again, and would rather do it leisurely, one of the reasons she doesn't want to return to her home studio where she's a part of their troupe. She asked if we'd tell her troupe coach that she won't perform with them anymore if it comes to it. And if that's what she wants down the road, then we will. Hopefully time heals this wound and helps her at least keep the friends she has there. But we can only hope. I'm so glad that you and the rest of the family are backing Jane up as much as possible. Hopefully the support you show her now will eventually win out over Dana's hateful behavior. I also hope that Dana actually gets therapy. Because going after a minor like that was beyond out of line. Maybe the suggestion coming from her own mom will make Dana reevaluate and make some changes. But regardless, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job parenting. I'm so sorry this happened, but the absolute best thing you can do is just keep showing Jane that you have her back, and it's her decision what she decides to do from here. We'd be happy to have her back if and when she decides to return to the aerial community. Half Angel, I can see the positives in here that have happened since the last post. Thank you for updating. I have been thinking of you all. It does sound like Jane is still blaming herself, and that will need unlocking as that mindset could spill over into other aspects of her life, stopping her achieving to her full potential. She needs to realize that this is Bridezilla jealousy that got directed towards her, nothing to do with her. And if an aunt had received that attention, it too would have got squashed. Perhaps angle her to performing is fine, just never a family wedding again. And please ask her again in a few weeks' time if any inappropriate comments were made or done. Sometimes it can take a while to feel comfortable enough to say it out loud. It's not uncommon for boys to take 30 years before they say something. I feel like her coach needs to know that the performance was amazing, but to know that there was fallout afterwards. They don't need to know exactly, but it will help explain the actions and ease the road back there for Jane. Please give her a big hug from me. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for wanting to leave my fiancée because of her abusive family? I've been dating my fiancée for 4 years and have been engaged for 7 months. We're trying to plan out a wedding for roughly fall next year. Her childhood was terrible and abusive, to put it mildly. Her parents were raging narcissists, and she was the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and thrown out the moment she turned 18. She was, however, a great student and hard worker. So with some scholarships and a part-time job, she has a great career and is pretty independent. The problem is that she still had contact with her family. None of them have changed. Well, actually something has changed. They have become more financially dependent on her. They enjoy slowly creeping back into her life and emotionally blackmailing her for support or whatever she can do. They're not pleasant about it either. They're rude, smug, and generally enjoy being a nuisance. And my fiancé can't say no. No matter the horrible things they say or how they outright try and intimidate her openly. I've always known her family history, and have always supported her through the issues with them. But in the last year or so they've become far more brazen and asinine. They come over to our house more often, they make messes all around the place. Her mother acts like she's the fucking stepmother from Cinderella. Her dad drinks all my fucking beer and empties out half the fridge. Her brothers stop by occasionally to act as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trash the place and leave us to clean the mess. And where is my fiancé in all this? Quietly standing in the corner, practically shaking. I'm no fool here, there is legitimate trauma. There's her need to feel loved by them and her hoping they will appreciate her. Before one of you noble commenters states the obvious, she's been in therapy for this for years. I've tried to establish boundaries. For nearly 2 years I've been trying to push these as clowns away. But this is her house she purchased, and no matter if contributions financial or otherwise will she let me have a say on who comes into her house. She's been beaten down mentally and emotionally by them for so long. She has told me recently that she wants to earn their approval. How they were right about her. How she needs to be better for them. I've had too many emotional conversations with tears and begging to count, hoping she will take the steps to get better. But she's an adult, I can't force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but feel so resentful of what she's doing. It's agonizing watching someone you love, someone who you know deserves so much better, openly destroy themselves for people like her family. It's been painful watching her cry herself to sleep one too many night because of them. I've tried too many times to help her get out of their clutches. But I have to think of the future. That happens when we have kids. What happens when she is postpartum and invites them over? What happens if there is a medical emergency for either of us? What if our finances get tight and they still demand money? This is the in-law family from hell and I won't be able to avoid them. Tomorrow I'm going to tell her how I want to delay the wedding until firm boundaries are established. If she resents, I walk. I can't do it anymore. I refuse to watch a slow death like this any further. Update: talked to her, and it went about as well as one could possibly expect. Currently getting myself set up in a hotel for a few days and working on possible long-term plans for moving out. Still a lot going on right now, but maybe sometime next week I'll be able to pit everything together into one update. Comments. Comment 1. What sad situation. Oop has absolutely done the right thing. A partner who refuses to manage their abusive relatives is like a tar pit. They'll drag you in and suffocate you with them. My ex-husband had this kind of relationship with his family. We paid for everything for his mother and brother. They lived in a house we paid for. Ate food we bought. Refused to look for work and complained that we didn't give them enough. I was paying for everything for our house, because his entire wage went on them. They were selfish and ungrateful. But he refused to do anything about it. There were lots of other issues as you'd expect in such a fucked up dynamic, but he was still stunned when I divorced him. Comment 2. I understand both positions. My parents aren't that bad. It was hard to understand the world works with kindness instead of emotional blackmail. My dad is okay, but he enables her. I'm on my own to heal and stand up to my mom. I was upset yesterday and my mom made it about herself, so I asked her to leave as politely as I could do. This is after a decade of therapy. I had a great therapist who taught me things like misogyny, narcissism, boundaries, and how to be a broken record to enforce boundaries. He would tell it to me straight, saying it'll be hard for me to find a partner who can deal with my family. When I did, I haven't let him go. He supports me when I need to enforce a break with my mom. I have to protect him from her bullying. He comes first. Update. The night after I made the first post, I had decided that I was going to have a heart-to-heart with my fiancée about her family. However, she came back from work the next day early and I already was off that day, so I initiated the talk a little sooner than I planned. Essentially, I told her how this arrangement was not sustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her due to how much involvement in her life her family has. And I certainly did not feel comfortable bringing a child into this world with them. I didn't want to tell her cold turkey no contact with them, but strict limitations to start with on them coming over, and what they can do around the house. I also requested couples therapy before marriage. She wasn't happy. She was just staring angrily at me while I spoke, then started yelling at me when I finished. She told me I don't understand their dynamic, it worked for her. I told her that they're abusive users who will bleed her dry and I have never seen them showing decency to her. She told me she just had to work harder for them to appreciate her. I basically yelled at her that a parent's child shouldn't have to beg and plead and work for them to be loved. I finally told her that she sets limits with them or I walk. She was livid, and since I was living in her house I was kicked out. So the past few days I have been staying in a hotel and have had my stuff taken out and put into storage. And frankly, it's been great. I am going to stay with family for a few weeks around mid-July, and after that I am going to go house searching for myself. I have spent the last couple days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games I haven't had time for, and could go back from work to a quiet room without her family tearing the place apart. Yesterday, however, things came to a head. We have basically been no contact since she booted me out, but I know every Saturday her family loves to spend the afternoon over, and she uses me as a shield from their abuse. However, in a very petty move, I simply kept my phone muted all day and played Disco Elysium. I knew she would call back for help with her family, and at this point pure resentment was kicking in for her, and I wanted nothing to do with her issues. By the end of the night she had sent me over a dozen texts, and finally 2 frantic voicemails begging me to come home. I decided to come over to check up on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I came to talk to her she was practically crushing my back, hugging me and sobbing. I gave her time to cool off and asked what happened. Long story short, her parents and brother came by to gift money from her and say horrible shit to her. She wanted to have me come over to help, but I was ignoring her. And when she tried to have one of her friends help out and everyone basically said fuck that, it all started clicking in for her. She kicked her family out, but not before they said some utterly vile shit to her I won't repeat. She kept apologizing to me and told me over and over to come home. I told her plainly that I had started to build up heavy resentment towards her for some time, and while I loved her and understand it was trauma and not her being outright abusive, there was major issues that would need to be addressed if we were to move forward. 1. She sells the house and moves. We make roughly the same amount of money and we will buy a house together. I am a grown-ass man and I will not live in a house I have no equal agency over. 2. Her family will never step a foot in it. They will never come over. They will be treated by me in a very threatening manner if they try and come in. 3. She gets a new therapist and we start premarital counseling. 4. She never makes me interact with her family. 5. We will go LC with her family right now, but make no mistake, we are working towards full NC on her end. I told her I love her. We have been together for a while now and have beautiful memories together, and I know she is suffering from abuse. But these are non-negotiable, and if she has a problem with any of them, then we have to go out separate ways. She told me she's realized for a while now that her family is toxic and unhealthy. She wants to make changes. She has accepted, but some of these will take a while to see through. For now I am going to stay in the hotel until I head back to stay with my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it clear her house is not somewhere I want to go. Her and I are both off tomorrow, so we will spend the day here, and maybe go out. This is obviously not over yet, but I might not post anything else until mid-August or so. Update 2. Despite all intentions of not updating until much later with the hopes of an improved relationship with my fiancée and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we are now broken up. Essentially what happened was, after last weekend where I left her for the time to deal with them herself, she seemed to finally grasp the situation and was open to changes, including boundaries and a possible move. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out in my hotel that I was staying in until I went back to my family for a couple weeks. The other night she was being very vague with texting when she originally was supposed to come over. She came much later than expected and I knew something was up. She basically unloaded on me how I was abusive, controlling, overly demanding and unsupportive. It took me 5 fucking seconds to figure out she was repeating verbatim some sort of rehearsed speech from her parents. And to be honest, I was so agitated at this point, despite making a huge gamble on her, I decided to be a prick about it. I asked her if her family told her to say this. She said they suggested it to her, but she came up with it herself, sure. I asked her to explain in detail what I did. She said I was living like a parasite off her. I reminded her that I'm paying 50/50 for her fucking mortgage, 50/50 for utilities and groceries as well. I have my own car I pay for. A job that makes just about as much as hers. Unlike her fucking leech parents who demand payments on the weekly and raid the kitchen on the weekends. I told her to try again with something better. She looked flustered and said I was trying to isolate her. I kinda smirked like a jackass and told her that I have always supported her many friendships that she has destroyed on her own, because no one wants to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. I was practically demanding to know at this point why she is so hellbent on destroying her life for these people. She just kinda shouted that I don't understand her family and she's just trying to earn their love back, and was basically ranting at that point. It's just so staggering to see up close. I have ventured into a few subreddits to get perspectives. And if you have any familiarity with them, you'll see how people who are victims of abuse by their own family can be so utterly broken by it, that it'll wreck their brain to where they truly believe they are the problem, and they deserve the abuse. Well, that's how she was. She was utterly broken and didn't want help. She didn't want to get better, she just wanted to get worse. It hit me like a truck, honestly, the realization. I really did feel like a fool for trying, even if it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was practically berserk at this point, and I was just mentally exhausted and needed her to leave before someone called the police. She finally left, but I had a few concerned neighbors check on me. Some of her friends are aware as they have messaged me checking on the situation. I told them the truth and that I just needed to be alone to think what to do next right now. They have revealed that she has given them similar rants after they expressed concern for her. One had even heard that she may be possibly at risk of losing her job. She is definitely having some sort of mental break. From my understanding, she is now completely isolated. She is actually sprinting into a horrible, lonely life right now. There's nothing I can do for her at this point. And as selfish as it sounds, I'm just glad it's going to be behind me. Now, for the next story. I'm considering skipping my brother's wedding because of a prank his fiancée played on my husband. My brother's fiancée loves Halloween. She is also a Disney adult, and has a childlike side to her which comes out sometimes. She's just super involved, absorbed when it comes to her interests. Anyway, I'm just sharing this for context because my perspective is that she often gets carried away, and I genuinely feel what I am going to describe was the result of one of those moments where she just took it too far and suffered some negative consequences. She is, however, taking it as a very personal attack. So we disagree, and the disagreement resulted in my husband cutting their visit short, aka they were asked to leave. 31F has made comments more than few times now since meeting him, that my husband gives off a dark vibe. She is always comparing him to characters from various books she reads. It's not necessarily criticism, she always explains that they are compliments. Well, I'm not sure anymore. Her reasons for these comparisons are based on his looks, the general vibe he gives off, and his tattoo. He only has one. But it's on his hand. During this recent visit, she mentioned she would love to see someone like him get scared, because she can't imagine him getting startled, or letting out a scream. Scaring him became her goal during her stay with us. None of us knew about it, not even my brother. The incident causing all the trouble is that she tried to jump scare my husband in the garage. It was dark and she ambushed him in the garage while wearing a full outfit and mask when he was returning from a run. Well, he didn't let out the scream she wanted. He instinctively reacted by shoving her against the wall. She hit her head and was quite shaken up. Luckily, he realized very quickly by the sound she made that it likely wasn't an intruder. He switched the lights on and pulled her mask off. He told me he was very confused in the moment. Why would she attack him? My husband helped her inside, apologized, made her tea, and then called me. I was out with my brother. When we got home, I asked 31F if she was okay, and I said her prank was stupid to do because she could have gotten seriously hurt. I don't know if it was what I said that bothered her, or if she was just waiting for her partner to come home, but she launched into crying about how my husband used an excessive amount of force, knowing it was most likely her just doing a harmless prank. In a nutshell. My husband asked her straightforwardly, "Are you implying I intentionally assaulted you?" She hesitated but chose to say yes, and my husband responded to that with, "Get out of my house." I tried to smooth it, but my husband was adamant. If that's what she genuinely believes, she's not welcome to stay. 31F chose to stick to her accusation. I decided to side with my husband. My brother is angry with me. He thinks I should have tried to do damage control and let them stay by convincing my husband to lean more into apologizing and placating his fiancée, who was just recovering from the situation. He thinks this whole thing would have blown over if I'd helped my husband fold. I find this unfair. My brother was counting on me to handle all this, yet he didn't speak up during the conversation or try to talk sense into his fiancée. My husband remained calm the entire time, but he obviously felt insulted by her remarks, and I think that's valid. Why should I have taken my brother's fiancée's side over my own husband? Especially when I feel like she was wrong for doing all that, then turning around and accusing my husband of wanting to hurt her. My brother says I was short-sighted and should think of their upcoming wedding, but I think he is the one who needs to get his fiancée to apologize to my husband. Editing to add the text below, in an attempt to answer some things that are getting lost in comments. I would like to clarify when I meant I tried to smooth the situation. I was not taking 31F's side or doubting my husband in any way. I simply tried to get everyone to consider tabling this until emotions had cooled down. And by those emotions I mean the hysterics of my brother's fiancée. My husband was calm throughout, although there was an obvious finality about his decision. He made his statement and disengaged. As mentioned, my brother looked to me hoping I'd persuade my husband, but I didn't, so they had to leave. The costume. I mentioned in a comment that I didn't get an opportunity to ask that night if she bought an outfit specifically for this prank, or if it was my brother's Halloween costume. They go to adult Halloween parties, and we're attending one this weekend 2 hours from where we live. It was part of my brother's costume, a mask like a golden masquerade one, but more coverage. It reminded me of the gold jeweled animal masks from Squid Game, or something you'd wear to a Rothschild party in the 70s, and she had on a long robe cloak with a hood. People asked me to update. I will do that. Please look at my comments too, in case I already answered a question you might have, but I think these two were the ones I saw pop up the most. I'm sorry I can't keep up with all the comments. I really tried. Comments. Comment 1. The fiancé is an idiot and is lucky that Oop's husband didn't seriously injure her. I recently saw a newspaper article about a girl who decided to prank her parents by jumping out at them in a dark room at a time when they believed she was away at college. The father shot and killed her, not realizing it was his daughter until too late. Comment 2. When trying to activate someone's fight or flight response, encountering fight is a very predictable risk. Triply so when there is no warning or consent involved. People who know they punch when scared can choose to avoid haunted houses. Plus, knowing beforehand that it's not a real murderer probably makes it less likely their brains will activate punchy time in the first place. Oop's husband did not have either opportunity. Update. I tried to talk to my brother multiple times after the incident, but each attempt ended in silence because I refused to give in to his demands. He wanted my husband and me to apologize to his fiancée, starting with me downplaying the whole situation so she wouldn't feel bad about her prank. I hesitated to send him the Reddit post I'd made. Initially, I thought it might work against us to make things worse. But his total inability to reason with me, or see the situation for what it was, became beyond frustrating. Since I couldn't physically deliver a cold, hard slap to his face for asking me to be complacent in allowing my husband to be falsely accused of assault, I figured the next best thing would be for him to read all your comments. Following the advice I got here, I tried to get ahead of the situation by informing my parents. My dad, a reasonable and practical man, immediately sided with my husband. His comments were similar to what a lot of people here had said, focusing on how dangerous and reckless the prank was and the ramifications of being falsely accused of assault. My mom, who unfortunately has always favored my brother, suggested we at least hear her out, referring to my brother's fiancée. As livid as I was about her reaction, I wasn't surprised by it. My dad did try to shut down her skepticism, but she remained on my brother's side for a few days until I showed them footage from my brother's Tesla, which he had tried to delete. The Sentry thing, sorry if I'm using the terminology incorrectly, I'm not a Tesla owner, recorded part of the interaction in the garage, not the jump scare itself. But the aftermath, which I know is more crucial. My husband's account was confirmed he used a measured amount of force to immobilize her, and was prepared to escalate if necessary, which is beyond generous for someone to do in a situation like that, and definitely not owed. Many of you speculated that she might have a fixation or even a crush on my husband, and I'm starting to reconsider some past interactions with that in mind. I also misunderstood what dark books she expressed she enjoyed and compared my fiancé to. I learned from comments here that they are actually a subtype of the romance genre. I didn't know she was comparing him to characters in romance novels, because one of the characters I recall her comparing my husband to was from a book about dragons. I genuinely wish I still remembered the names of various characters she's mentioned over the months so I could satisfy my own curiosity, but my brain glossed over the names during conversations. We have a group chat for the wedding, which includes my brother, my parents, my brother's fiancée, and her parents. In that chat, I addressed the incident but didn't share the Tesla footage, only mentioned that it exists. Her parents didn't respond in the chat, though I know they saw the message. Later her mom called mine. Apparently, they had no idea about the prank. It's hard to say whether they believe me or if they've taken their daughter's side after speaking with her. My brother's fiancée and my brother have both extended apologies to my husband, and have requested our presence at their upcoming wedding. My parents, trying to keep the peace, have encouraged us to go, saying it's the honorable thing to do. So for the sake of family formality, we've decided to attend. However, my husband has made it clear that we'll be there out of obligation. We will be keeping a distance from them going forward. We haven't explicitly stated it, but there will be no future invitations to our home, not even for the holiday dinner we had planned before all this happened. My husband is going to minimize all future interaction with my brother's fiancée. I don't think we'll ever trust her again. I'll try to spend some one-on-one time with my brother to gauge where we stand. Our relationship feels strained, and this incident has made me realize that I lost him to her long before this happened, something I hadn't fully recognized until now. Now, for the next story. My motherly aunt is pressuring me to give up my unborn daughter to my godly cousin, who can't have children. I, 24 female, am currently 8 months pregnant with a baby girl, and my aunt cousin have been giving me trouble since I have announced the news. My partner and I already adore our girl and have no plans to give her up, but my aunt wants me to give up my child to my cousin, who has been suffering for infertility for the past 5 years. For more context, my aunt has raised my sister and I as a motherly figure after our mother passed away when we were very young. We have been quite close with our aunt cousin throughout our life, and have been trying to support my cousin through her struggles with infertility. My aunt is also very religious, being a Mormon who regularly attends church, and has a very rigid, close-minded view on morality, values, and living a good life. She believes that a child deserves a strong, foundational religious upbringing with a strong, providing father and a loving, attentive mother. Since my partner is not Christian, and because we both have full-time jobs and careers, she believes that my child will grow up confused and misguided in our household due to our religious differences, lacking a proper sense of identity and adequate care. She says she fears that our child's well-being will not be put first in such an environment, and that our kid could likely go down a dark, immoral path. According to her, my cousin, who works part-time from home, and her husband are way better able to provide my child with a loving home with good values and religion. I have both my aunt and cousin blocked on most forms of communication, and I have moved to a new home, where they do not know the address. My partner and I also got married in a private ceremony, so they won't have control over my medical decisions. Out of the two, my aunt has been more aggressively towards me, and even showed up to my old apartment one day to scream and argue with me about the situation. She, in a fake nice tone, tried to get me to come with her to a cafe near the church to speak with me about the baby, even when I told her there is nothing to be discussed, and that I'm keeping the baby. I spoke with the apartment manager and had to hide until she left after half an hour. My aunt also has her church friends after me. They sometimes regularly send me hostile text message and voicemails. My cousin has been on the quieter side towards me, and has been struggling with depression and trauma from her latest pregnancy last year, ending in a stillbirth of her baby girl after preterm labor at 30 weeks. She has been regularly posting on social media, and has joined motherhood-related groups. I've heard through gossip that she is trying to get a baby through those groups, and has been banned from a considerable amount of them to her dismay. She had been harassing young moms and widows for their babies. My cousin is desperate for a baby to fix her family, and is apparently waiting for my name to give birth for my baby girl, who she apparently sees her own late baby in. My aunt and her are apparently sure that I will be overwhelmed with my decision, and the responsibilities with motherhood that I will give more to my baby, by letting my cousin and her husband adopt her. My aunt says that giving my baby to my cousin shouldn't be as hard as it could be, because we are family, and that I could have a baby later on, as I am still young, and have plans to attend grad school after working for a while. My cousin also apparently wants to get into contact as we had before my pregnancy. I will not be speaking to her again, until after I give birth to see where she is then, and to prevent further stress during my pregnancy. I have been very supportive of her through her infertility journey, and generally liked her more than my aunt growing up. But her behavior and thinking have shocked me and are making me fear for my safety. I am planning a big wedding party for next year since my partner and I privately got married this year, and I am not sure if my cousin aunt would be invited and able to come. I have a lot of family support from both sides right now apart from those who are close to them and on their side, but I'm not sure if that support will be as strong in a year, and what my relationship with my aunt cousin will be then. I have skipped some family events that I know they will be at, but I don't want to miss out on those family gatherings and fun forever. I'm not sure how the future will look like with my aunt cousin after my baby and the issues that arise with that. Any support would be appreciated. Comments. Comment 1. As an ex-moon, I'm not surprised them going to the aunt's bishop was a waste of time. They are men who got a little bit of power and are the most condescending assholes, especially towards women. And for Op's cousin wanting a white-only kid, I wonder if her or her mom Op's aunt subscribed to the Mormon belief that people of color descend from a group of people punished by God. For being wicked, God changed their skin to show it. Gross for so many reasons. I rarely wish this, but I hope Op's cousin never has a child. She's not fit to be a mother based off the details shared. Comment 2. One thing that people who don't grow up Mormon might not realize is that the religion can cause a breeding ground for unhealthy mental beliefs. Bishops are just guys who are overall called on a whim, no formal ecclesiastical training, and most of the time are just trying their best but might be very wrong in their approach. There is also a big unspoken expectation in the religion to appear perfect. So outwardly families act on their 100% best behavior, but behind closed doors there is a lot of conflict. And the conflict causers are very often not fully truthful to bishops, and the cycle continues with the bishop advising on only half the information, etc. Anyways, I'm proud of Op for putting distance between herself and her aunt, cousin, and former religion. I hope everything continues smoothly for her. Update 1. This will be a small update. We got in contact with the local church leader and talked to them about the situation with my aunt and cousin, who are both active members. We talked to him for a while. He initially dismissed my concerns as personal conflict between family and tried to refer us over to counseling services. We explained to him that my cousin is dealing with trauma from her baby's death, and that she is having false hopes about adopting my baby, which would be raised in a good home. We also told him that my aunt is feeding into those hopes and has been harassing me on her behalf, causing disturbance and a lot of stress. He told me he understood my side, and that he knew what my cousin has been going through with her inability to have kids. He said he would contact my aunt and cousin to see what they have to say about the situation. I talked again with him today. He said that my aunt and cousin would like to speak with me, and that they were concerned that I stopped communicating with them, especially since I moved away. I explained to him that their behavior regarding my baby influenced me to do those things and pressed him on what they said. He said that my cousin had talked with a church therapist, and was looking into adoption to start a family, because her IVF treatments were likely not going to produce a child with her condition. I emphasized to him that I was not giving up my baby, and that my cousin had been thinking such. He said that understood that and started asking me for personal details on how I was doing now. He was again trying to set up a meeting between us and my aunt cousin and referring us to services. I told him I was not comfortable with that at the moment, and he told me to at least call my cousin once. He said he will meet with my aunt on Sunday since I was too scared to do on my own. Our call ended after that. I'll comment any update on what he says in the coming days under this post. Edit: I am not satisfied with his response, and do not like that he is putting pressure on me with reconnect with my aunt and cousin. He says he understands my concerns, but I think he is being rather dismissive of them and trying to force us to resolve our issues. My partner and I thought it was worth a shot reaching out to him too, because he has influence and religious authority over my aunt cousin. I'll see what he says on the next phone call and see what I can do to make him care more. Edit: to make clear, I didn't give him any personal information and have no plans for any in-person meeting with my aunt and cousin. We are in contact with legal help. We do not live in Utah. Update 2. We spoke again with the bishop. He said that there isn't much he can personally do to resolve the situation within his capacity between me and my aunt cousin, other than refer to counseling services. I asked him if he did meet with my aunt and he said he did. Their conversation was apparently focused on my cousin and helping her heal. He told me my cousin was also grieving the loss of communication with me and my sister, who hasn't been talking much to her anymore. I told him that my cousin was trying to take my baby to replace hers, and that her and my aunt's behavior was threatening the safety and well-being of me and my family. I think he was losing interest in the conversation, so he just told me to do whatever I feel is best for my family, but to consider the grief my cousin has been through and contact family counseling services for further help on this matter. Me and my partner sent him an email afterwards with a copy to our lawyer to close off communication. I decided to unblock my cousin and send her a message. I told her that my partner and I are keeping our baby and that is not up for discussion. I encouraged her to seek proper therapy if she hasn't already done so, and told her that I am not comfortable with her husband, or my aunt being involved in my child's life. She hasn't responded yet. Regardless of what she says, our relationship will not return to as it was before, and she will not be a part of my child's life. Update 3. Here is the update everyone has been waiting for. I was busy in the few last months with the birth and projects I have been working on as I recover from birth and take care of my new baby. I logged into Reddit a few times since then, but haven't gotten a chance to update. I am 25 now and my baby is almost 4 months old. Time flies. She is doing well and brings us so much joy. I love going on walks with her and she is growing up so fast. I am planning to go back to work soon, looking for a new job. Thank you all for the concern and well wishes, and I hope everyone is having a great time during the Thanksgiving holiday season. Now, the update that everyone is looking forward to: my cousin and aunt. Since my last update, my cousin and aunt went silent for a while, and my cousin didn't respond to my texts. In August, my aunt reached out to me through a new number and asked me how I was, and if I had the baby yet. We talked. She was concerned about my baby's well-being since I distanced myself from a lot of my family and had to leave my job. I asked about my cousin. She says they have been trying to adopt a baby through their church connections, but nothing has been successful so far cause they probably just started on that. I asked about whether they consulted with a proper adoption agency, but my aunt said that my cousin's husband's past may become a problem, didn't know about that, and she proceeded to rant about how the white birth rate is dropping, and how people were actively denying themselves parenthood. She asked me if I still wanted the baby, and got angry about 9th-month abortions. She is pro-life, WO exceptions. I reaffirmed to her that I did, and she talked about how my cousin was getting old, but she is in her early 30s, and that her nest is still empty. She wanted me to at least share the joy and let my cousin be in my daughter's life and spend time with her. I told that would not be possible due to their past behavior. I fear that my cousin would try to become her mother and let her delusions get to her again. My aunt said that my cousin was trying to become better and got some church counseling. I still told her no. She then asked me if I knew anyone or any resources to adopt a baby. I told her I didn't, and that my cousin or husband should be careful and patient with trying to become parents. My aunt emphasized how becoming parents was important to my cousin and her husband, because they deserve children at this point, and for their reputation since everyone around them is reaching the parenthood milestone. She asked about my future family plans and pushed me on when I am going to get pregnant again, have my next child. She told me family planning was important, especially after this surprise pregnancy, and asked if they could be involved next time. As the call went on, more and more of her past usual behavior became apparent, and I was getting tired of it. I wanted to end the call, but she ended it first because she had some activity. Thankfully, I have my sister to keep me in the loop with what's happening with my aunt, cousin, and other matters regarding my family and my old church. Everything my aunt said was apparently true about my cousin. According to my sister, my cousin's overall mental health seems to have improved from her worst, but she still has her deep depressive periods. She sometimes feels very empty with her lack of children and her worsened relationships with me and my sister. My cousin and her husband are also trying to find an IVF doctor abroad, in hopes of a miracle since a lot of their options are shutting down here. My cousin apparently still views my baby as something she lost. But she believes God will give her kids soon and has been trying to get her sins forgiven. We are skipping Thanksgiving with my side of the family in a few days for obvious reasons. I am going back to the workforce soon, likely after all the holidays. I have my childcare arrangements ready with all the necessary precautions, and the future is looking good overall. Again, thank you all for your support, and let me know if you have any questions about anything Mormonism, my family, motherhood, etc.